Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about losing your job. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what should a software developer do if they lose their job? Well, the simple answer, I suppose, would be to find another job based on your options. Uh, but since that's going to make a pretty short video, I'm going to give you at least my take on the more holistic answer. So, whenever something goes bad in my life, I try to think about it as a learning opportunity. I try to remember that there are two parts which is going to factor in the most for me when I'm going through something that is bad. One part of it is going to be all the emotional stuff, where you, depending on who you are, like your emotional resilience and other factors within your life, you're going to go through a tough time usually. And what I urge people to do, at least this is what I try to do, is to view the pain, the depression, or whatever you're facing. It really depends on what you're facing and who you are and so forth. Look at it as a temporary thing, and look at it as something very similar to having a cold or something like that. It's just something that you need to get through. So if you lose your job, as an example, realize that all the anxiety and all the things that might come from that is something that is temporary. And once you master that skill, you realize that sure, you may not be able to control your emotions, but it's not really about controlling your emotions. It's about having the right perspective to realize that yes, this is something that is bad, quote unquote, that is happening to me right now, but I'm going to get through it, and there are certain things that I can do in order to make my stay in this emotional state less chaotic, more tolerable, things like that. And then at the other part of it is that there is always learnings to be had. And that's the thing that I try to focus on. It's very, I mean, when something just like literally just happens, it's very chaotic, it's very disruptive to your emotional state usually, depending on who you are, of course. And so at that moment, I like to say it's a very good tip that I actually got from, what was his name, Day9. I don't know if he's still doing that. I used to be into StarCraft 2 many years ago, and he streamed a lot of StarCraft 2 related stuff, right? And one of the tips that he gave, which I completely agree with, is that he was explaining how to get better at StarCraft. And basically what he said was that when you're playing, don't try, like when you realize that you're making a mistake, or that you're realizing that something isn't working with your strategy when you're playing, don't try to fix it whilst in a game. Study it once the game is over, learn from it in the down period, and then bring those learnings with you into the next game. And that I believe is actually the way to do it. Like when you're emotional, when you're like going through a lot of stuff, don't put so much pressure on yourself to try to find learnings and things like that. Just try to get through it, and once you are through it and you can get more control over yourself, start to do a few things. So the thing that I usually do is that I try to reflect on my learnings from my last job, and really just think about what went well, what didn't go so well. And here it's very important to use, in my experience at the very least, to be honest with yourself. And that comes down to personal maturity, because people who are very emotionally, well, not emotionally per se, but people who are a little bit immature or weak, well, I'm not going to say weak per se, but people who have an ego that is a bit sensitive to criticism and so forth, what you will like to do is usually that you're going to make it all about somebody else. And that's not something that I'm going to be able to help you all that much with, because it comes down to personal growth. To realize that there's a very good saying that the only thing that you can truly control in life is your response to things that happen. And I believe that to be completely true. If something bad happens to you, you can make it all about the other person's fault, and you can blame everybody around you, and you do these sorts of things, right? But in my experience, the thing that is usually most useful to you, because I mean that's going to help you avoid your responsibility in the whole thing. But on the other hand, I also like to say that you can't be like the complete opposite and blame yourself and nobody else all the time, because unfortunately that's going to probably kill you, make you a very socially insecure person. The trick, in my opinion, that's what I try to go for, is to not judge anything for anything. Just simply try to objectively look at what happened, why did it happen, and try to understand it. Not trying to emphasize blame anywhere. Basically just say that, okay, so as an example, when I've gotten fired, or like when I've lost a job, it's been due to, like, I realized that, okay, so my first mistake was that I was too outspoken. I got frustrated over A, B, and C, and I'm very verbal about that frustration towards my manager and to my people and so forth. And although I might be in the right, because I identify that yes, I might have been right, that didn't really matter, because, and then I go over and I look at the other perspective and I say, well, the reason why it didn't matter is because my manager was incompetent, or my manager was not informed, or was like coming in from a third perspective without having a lot of information, similar to a police officer, for as an example, coming to a crime scene state where everybody's claiming everybody else did it. How is that person going to respond? And then I start to analyze, okay, in that situation he or she doesn't actually know any better, so they're going to have to go on something. And because they are this sort of person, the thing that they're going to go on is gut feeling, and I've already established myself with a history of being outspoken and quote-unquote negative, because my frustration over incompetency within the company has had the upper hand on me. And although I might have been correct in that situation, that doesn't really matter, because my manager is not able to perceive these perspectives that I have, and therefore all they're going to see is the history of bad behavior, and they're going to assume that I'm again the problem. Similar to racial profiling, or any type of profiling, right? So that's the process that I usually go through. And so when I start looking for the next job, or when this is what I suggest that you do, commit to addressing those issues in your next role. Work on those things exclusively. Because the thing is, what you really need to remember, guys, is that you will get better at things, but there are always going to be things that you can get even better at. And it's my experience usually that it's better for you to be a more well-rounded person than to simply try to avoid working on the things that are actually causing real pain. And if you get fired for, let's say, incompetency or bad behavior, or maybe it's just a layoff or something like that, try to really tune in to the thing that is giving you anxiety. Listen to the anxiety. What are you anxious about? Because that's probably going to be the best tell to what you should work on next. And then I tell people that you should, after that, start trying to find yourself a role that is going to develop you to the next level. Like, basically start asking yourself, when you are back in emotional control of yourself, what would be the next thing that is going to get me to where I want to be in my career, for example. And then finally I tell people, prioritize your health and personal growth every day. Because if you are fairly solid in all the things that are required to be a professional software developer, and you do practice a little bit of coding challenges here and there, some computer science stuff, just to kind of keep things on top of things, and of course you have the emotional intelligence and all that stuff as well, getting another job for you as a software developer is like nothing, my friend. It should not be. So it's scary maybe, because everything that is unknown is usually scary to a human, but objectively, logically, it's very likely that you're just going to be fine, and you're simply going through an emotional state. So what I want you to take away from this is that if a software developer loses their job, it's pretty much business as usual as for anybody who loses their job. You dust yourself off, usually you feel sorry for yourself a little bit, and then you start looking for the next job. And so what I urge you to do is, number one, reflect on what you learned from your last job, good or bad. Just like try. I like to read. I have a saying where I try where basically I say that I try not to judge anything that happens in the universe, because by judging it I would put myself in a position where I would know the nature of things better than the universe knows it. And that's just not right, because good and bad, good and evil, or right and wrong, and so forth. Sometimes they are clear cut, black and white, but for the most part everything is gray. And so instead of trying to play the game of making myself feel better and trying to always pick the perspective that is going to make me feel emotionally the best, I try to look at things or try as best as I can to look at them as they are, rather than the way I want them to be. And so when I look back at a job or an occupation or like a role I've had, I try to really look at what did I do well and what did I not do so well, and why did things go the way that they did, regardless of if it's all my fault, all somebody else's faults, or usually, as it is, a mix of things. Try to just look at it objectively as much as possible, and then commit to addressing those issues in your next role. And when you start looking for that next job, prioritize the thing that I always like to say: personal strength and development above all else. So when you're looking for your next role, look at a role that is going to develop you and take you to the next level. And then finally, always put your your health and well-being together with daily learning, daily growth, and so forth above all else. And I promise you, my friend, you're going to be just fine. Have a great day.